It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again, time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 451. Tonight I'm joined by Ammo.
Hello.
Ashgar.
Hello.
Kodra.
Access granted.
Tam.
Hello.
And Thalen.
Hi.
Wait, was I the only one who was super excited that this was episode 451?
Yes, you are.
I guess so.
I missed that one.
It's
It's the code to every single first lock.
Oh,
Yes.
I suppose it is. Also, the temperature at which books barn.
These are related facts.
Oh, are they? I actually didn't realize that. Is that why 451 is the first code?
I don't know.
I don't know, but I mean, it would make sense to me that someone's a Fahrenheit 451 fan.
Oh, no, it was the office code to Looking Glass Studios.
Aha! But why was it the office code of Looking Glass Studios? Was someone a Fahrenheit 451
that's why.
fan?
At least I believe I remember hearing that story from them.
That one I don't know.
Seems entirely believable.
Cities of Sigmar. Tell us some things.
Oh, man. So, okay. Warhammer the Old World went away years ago because reasons.
They blew it all up. Maniacs.
Near as I can tell, it went away because it was losing Games Workshop money.
Probably.
Which, makes a certain amount of sense. And,
But what they did with it at first was a poor choice, let's say.
wasn't great. And it has since become great. Like, it's a really cool little minis game with a lot of flavor and a lot of, cool concepts and cool armies and the old humans from Warhammer Fantasy.
Yay.
And at the time, I get it. Vaguely German dudes in their pajamas with big feathered hats was a cool aesthetic if what you were coming from was historicals.
No one wanted to play them.
But nobody wants to play them. And, you have to get past the humans. A lot of people are like, humans are boring. And those humans, sorry, were boring. With the exception of a couple of things, a couple of, standout units, like dude riding a griffin, which rules. It's mostly boring.
I'm a premier humans are boring person, but there were a few standouts, just not very many, and most of them were, in fact, extremely boring.
I mean, I'm looking at you, Bright Wizard.
But now...
So they turned basically a whole bunch of the old world factions into one faction, which they called Cities of Sigmar, which was kind of the catch-all for, hey, we know you've got these old minis. We know you'd like to use them. Here's a book for you. And the previous version of that book was honestly a work of art, actually making all of that stuff work in a way that kind of makes sense and preserves the individuality of those units, etc., etc., etc. Except mostly what it meant was, here's a book where you cherry-picked the very best things, and 80% of the units were garbage, which is not how they design most of their books. Enter the most recent Cities of Sigmar release, which as of this episode isn't officially out. You can get the early access box, and I have. But that's not actually play legal in tournaments or whatever quite yet because the full range hasn't been released. But it's a book where they said, okay, finally, we are going to update the range on a bunch of models, and in so doing, kind of consolidate a bunch of different things into units that make sense and actually work with Age of Sigmar, the game, not the old world Warhammer Fantasy shoehorned into Age of Sigmar. And these models are great. They have taken a page from the Imperial Guard, which if you're going to do regular humans in the bonkers fantasy setting of Age of Sigmar, is a great choice. Because it's just regular people doing their best against a nonsensically magical world. And the thing that they give them to make that all work is, much like Imperial Guard, orders. They're just more organized than everybody else. And so you get these, you've got your basic weapon and shield infantry models, but they all have all this character because the armor doesn't match, and these aren't like, they're not like the Olympian physiques of, other factions, or like the Stormcast, or even, Chaos Warriors or whatever. They're like regular people. So they actually have models that intentionally have ill-fitting armor and mismatched weapons, and who kind of look like maybe they don't want to be there, which is great for your just regular rank and file. Like, they have so much personality in these humans, and then they've arranged the whole thing around, okay, this is Cities of Sigmar. How do we take these cities and go out and wage war? Well, most of our people feel safe inside their cities, so our logic is we'll take the city with us. So this is the faction of huge shields, and like you're basically making a castle and moving your castle around, but like you've got units that reflect different parts of a castle that you're putting on the board, and mechanically it all works together because in order to issue orders to your units, you want them to be clustered around your leader models, which means that you've got your leaders in the castle. The units are making up the parts of the castle, and they're all sticking together to, form this structure. And it's just such a cool way to make humans interesting, because that is a challenge. But you really get this, like, this unit is the king piece. It's got its retinue of advisors, and then this unit is the castle wall. This unit are the parapets at either side of the wall. This model's the gate.
I think my favorite unit is the human riding an ogre, where it's just sort of like a cannon emplacement.
Yes.
Just happens to be carried around on the back of an ogre.
Yeah. Oh, it's hilarious. He's like he's the watchtower. The watchtower is a big ogre backpack. He's got like a little telescope up there. Their rank and file fall into two units. You've got your, regular sword and board type, but then you've got the Fusiliers, which have one of my favorite just minis game and general aesthetics, which is heavy armored person with a huge emplaced shield shooting a gun over said shield, and like they're the wall. But I've been painting them recently and just loving the variety in the minis, because they really are all different, and even just swapping a few of the pieces around dramatically changes the model, because they're all different shapes and sizes. And like, even though they're technically all in a uniform in that they're wearing armor with a tabard over it, it's all very different. Like, there's one dude that's just totally jacked, and there's another dude that's like kind of portly. There's one like kind of skinny dude where his armor is too big. There's this, I painted one of the cavalry, and she's this just incredibly burly lady and looks incredible. Like, she's got this incredible personality, and it's really clear that they did not sculpt her to be pretty. They sculpted her to be like, they did not sculpt her to be pretty, but she is sculpted to be feminine, but she's got a flail and a shield on a horse and looks like she is going to use it on you. And that's just such a cool thing to see in a hobby that's been so dominated by Space Marines for so long. Mm-hmm. It's like Games Workshop has realized that they can really, really easily add diversity in their armies by just sticking a bunch more heads on sprues. I think that the basic infantry sprue came with like 26 heads for 10 models.
What I find interesting about this is something they've rediscovered, because the very first plastic model kits that they ever did were insanely customizable.
Yeah.
Like, you could create units with such personality because you had all these extra bits that you could throw on them, or, swap heads, or, swap, stances.
Yeah. And it's a thing that had kind of fallen off, and they've been doing it. The only place where it's really been preserved are orcs. Also
Skaven. Some Skaven anyway.
That's fair. Skaven have been doing it too.
But it's been started to do it with some of the more recent Stormcasts, like starting with 3rd edition Age of Sigmar.
Yeah.
The Stormcasts they put out with those were much more diverse and customizable. But prior to that, Stormcast were just dudes in gold armor.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's really neat to have. I painted up 10 of the steel helms. I think they're called. Steelheads are a different thing.
Fish.
But I painted up 10 of the steel helms, and like they're all different. But when you put them all together, they look like they fit a unit. And if I put together another unit of them, they can all look different. Like, I don't know how much, I haven't pushed the limits, but I'm pretty sure I could get to probably 50 or 60 of these before I started to have like obvious repeats. And I'm not going to have that many of these dudes. I don't play games that big. And the best part is now I also have a bunch of extra heads that I can now use on other things, which make all of my other kits more varied.
Right. Because, like, you can absolutely use a fantasy head on a 40k body.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
There's really not that much difference when it comes to just the head.
And they have these kind of feels like fantasy. Honestly, what they remind me of are the guards from Thief that have the like tabard over plate mail and plate and chain and like the weird wide helmets, and like they kind of look like that. And it's just I remember those characters having a bunch of character. Like, I can imagine one of these little dudes chasing after somebody, calling them a taffer. But it's a joy. It's also, I also have the I will say that the banners drive me slightly crazy. Putting aside that banners in this day and age are definitely leaning into plastic is magic, and so they're just enormous things flying in the air. The entire new Cities of Sigmar line assumes that there is a reasonably strong breeze blowing at about a 45-degree angle from behind the mini. And it is at least consistent, but it's definitely weird to have like banners flying forward off of my minis. But it's so charming, and they do an incredibly good job of making them blend really well with the old minis that they kept, because they did retire some of the old ones, but they kept basically all of the really good ones.
Yeah, there were some really bad sculpts.
Oh yeah, but like my personal favorite, the Celestial Huracanum, which is basically a wizard cart with a giant orrery on top of it, just works next to the new ones. Like, there's no, you look at it and you're like, yeah, that fits. That's the right scale. It looks like these people would run alongside this thing. This is fine. They also have, I appreciate that they've gone a little bit deeper into their wizards, less of the, robe and staff, and the current new one is a buff wizard in every sense of the word.
Look, books are heavy.
He's definitely a books are heavy wizard. Although in this case it's probably a cauldron, but similar concept. And he's built like a blacksmith, which
muscle wizards.
Yeah, well, and it's not just muscle wizard. It's like, I say built like a blacksmith, not built like a bodybuilder.
Yeah, like he's built like Braum.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's built like a dude who is not going anywhere, and whose job is to be very strong, not to look really good. It's kind of a nice break from the other minis that I've been painting alongside them, which are Slanesh cultists, and therefore, like, yes, they're all excessively perfect physique, because that's sort of the thing. Which I think I've talked about them before. Also really, really clever modeling on them. Like, there's some real thoughtfulness. There's some real thoughtfulness in their sculpts lately, and I really appreciate that. Because I think that for a good long time, they were sort of doing the least common denominator thing. Put all our dudes in, make all of our dudes like triangle shaped, and make all of our women in boob armor, and call it a day. And like, that's kind of exhausting. But we've actually gotten to the point in Age of Sigmar that witch elves, the epitome of let's have somebody run around in a plate mail bikini actually feel unique and interesting rather than like eye rolling.
Yeah.
Which is something of an accomplishment.
I wonder if now that there's a normal humans faction again, maybe it'll finally be time for Felix to come back.
For who?
Felix, Gotrex's poor random human friend that really wishes he wasn't here today.
Oh man.
There have been rumors that he's been a Stormcast and Gotrek just doesn't know, but I have no idea what the actual status of that is.
Last I checked, Gotrek is still looking for him, and Felix is still presumed dead.
It's kind of been a long time.
It has been a long time. I mean, it took them a while to bring Gotrek back.
It did, but Gotrek is. There are a few characters in Age of Sigmar that are specifically carried from the old canon, and why some of them are alive is still a bit of a question mark. Gotrek and Felix's rival would be that one of those.
I mean, if Gotrek's around, yeah, that poor, sad Skaven needs to be around too.
He's having no more success.
I mean,
got an awesome model though.
But yeah, I mean, Gotrek has been back for a while. At some point, Felix has to come back. I just wonder when it will be and what he will come back as.
Yeah. They've also been doing a good job introducing new characters. Cities of Sigmar is going to finally get me to break my streak and buy a centerpiece model.
Oh.
Which I have managed not to do, mostly because Alariel is expensive and bad in Age of Sigmar. But I've managed to avoid buying like any of the huge centerpiece models. But the human leader is incredible. She's this manticore riding.
Oh, her, yes.
Yeah, manticore riding heavy armored knight whose story is she basically was a general and got tired of the nobles, the noble court ordering her people to go die and like treating their lives like nothing. So she murdered all of them and now uses their weapons from the back of her manticore, and like is the tactician who invented the castle formation, which has not only more success but a much lower like fatality rate than the previous versions. And so she's this like hero of the people, also has this kind of macabre display on her manticore back to let people know that, hey, you're a corrupt noble, I'm coming for you.
Nice. You've been writing a lot of fiction for this as well, right?
Yeah, and a lot of it is because it's such an when part of what I love about the minis thing is that when I see a mini that's got like a ton of character and I kind of imagine like the person that this miniature represents, you know, what is that person's day-to-day like? And these are so characterful that I can imagine what like they inspire the imagination for like how their days go. Like I didn't put the model together this way, but there's one model that put it together the right way, and it genuinely looks like this person is like uncomfortably itchy. And you know, it is not necessarily the fantasy that I want to go for my force, but I can absolutely imagine somebody leaning into that and being like, this person is more worried about like being itchy than whatever horrors lie over that ridge. Because they know what to do about that, but like they can't do anything about this burlap that's scratchy. And it's the same kind of thing that makes me enjoy Imperial Guard. It's a similar kind of like, hey, this is a really normal person who like, yes, they fight, but they're more than just a soldier. Admittedly, it's also why of the Chaos factions I went into Slaanesh, because they're the easiest to envision doing something outside of battle time. Whether any of that's a good idea is a different story, but you can envision it. It probably involves a lot of wine and grapes. But yeah, so it's been sort of like it's it's a thing that keeps me painting, is getting excited about a character and then wanting to like fully realize that character. I think if I put another set, there's one of the there's a collection of pieces that can go together in a particular way that makes it look like somebody's sort of staring down with dismay at their own tabard. And I think I can paint like a stain. But yeah, I've been writing a little background on like, hey, what is this? I painted my own unique city for them. What is that? What does that look like? Where are they actually from? And I'm going to play with about 14 different skin color paints, which is awesome.
No, I've enjoyed, like, I think I saw the like musician troupe of yours. I really liked it.
They're really fun. I look forward to the actual full line releasing, because there's a command unit that has one of my favorite rogues, like rogue type models I've seen in a long time. Just big flowy cape and hood and a rapier hidden just under the cape, poking out a little bit. It's great.
So I did something dumb this weekend. In Path of Exile, you can have private leagues. And this is a thing that some folks within that community do as little events. And Sir Gog is a YouTuber. I think he streams, mostly does like breakdowns of esoteric things in Path of Exile. And he's doing the Toucan League. And the thing with private leagues is you can't make them easier, but you can make them harder. And you can apply various specific rules to the league. And two of the rules that he chose is that everybody starts 25% resist in the hole.
Yuck.
And every item drops scoured. Except for uniques. But, so basically there are no rares or yellow or blue items that are dropping. It's just white items. So you have to craft on them. So I decided to do this thing because I had been wondering if SRS Guardian was viable without any gear. So far it is, but it has been very weird the way in which I evaluate drops as compared to how I normally do.
Is it just the base?
Just the base with sockets and links. That's it.
So you really care about currency.
Yeah, you really care about crafting currency. So yeah, like I have a trade stash, which, is mostly just me asking for, here's an item I found. Do you have any alchs? Because alchemy orbs are really important when you need to make everything a rare. Chaos orbs will probably be equally important for trying to re-roll stuff.
No chaos recipes.
Yeah, no chaos recipes. So you can't print your own chaos orbs.
Oh, but you can print your own chromatics.
Yes, you can still do chromatics. You can still get jewelers. Those both absolutely still work. But yeah, like it's been wild to try and function without anywhere near as good of a gear as I normally would have in this environment. Newsflash, the Sentinel of Radiance from Guardian is wildly overpowered and it's carrying me big time. But the other side effect of this is that he asked everyone to play less used ascendancies. And while SRS Guardian right now is super powerful, it is still only 3% of players.
Less than 2%.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a bunch, Chieftain also falls in that same basket. It is an underused ascendancy, and it's one of the ones that was reworked. Raider, which weirdly enough, my Lightning Arrow character is a Raider, so that would have been viable, I guess.
Yeah, he asked for either one of the two ascendancies got reworked, or one of the ascendancies that is the least played per class, basically.
Yeah, so Assassin, Guardian.
So it's Assassin, Guardian, Raider, Gladiator, Necromancer, and what am I missing? Berserker.
Which is so weird to me that Necromancer is the least played. I guess that tells you
how
Yes,
few
but
minion
there are
players there
so
are.
many witches. There are so many witches.
Yeah, I mean,
Not
there's
that
a
Necromancer is unpopular, it's just that Elementalist and Occultist are super popular.
Yeah.
But Guardian is, despite the rework, still the least played Templar Ascendancy. And while I like Berserker very much, it is definitely the least played Marauder Ascendancy. Chieftain is only getting in by technicality, because even though it's still not popular and just got reworked, so he's allowing it for this one.
But it also kind of got me thinking, it is too late in this league to really do this, but it would be interesting to do a private league for the next league. And just do a trade league, which would not preclude us from sharing stuff, would basically be a version of Guild SSF, where we could only trade amongst ourselves.
I guess that would be a way to do that.
Yeah.
I would certainly be interested in trying it.
I think it would
Same.
be interesting.
Private leagues have a limited period of time, but once they're done, you get dumped into the regular league. So
yeah, but like you can also extend that, and I was looking it up, and it was like reasonable to do one that would be the full length of the league.
I actually hadn't looked at that.
Yeah,
but also might not be. That's a decision you don't need to make up front.
Right. You can keep extending it, but yeah, like I thought it would be interesting because, like, I mean, I know Grace is specifically not a fan of trade. You know, Thalen, I know you don't mind using trade, but you don't want to actually interact with it.
Like, I'd rather it wasn't there, so I just didn't have to worry about it at all.
Right. You know, I think Ash and I are the two that most freely use trade.
I don't know. I've been using trade.
Yeah, like I find it entertaining, but you know, it would be interesting to have kind of a guild SSF.
Trade is super easy. Just get 2 brothers' gifts to drop in a single day.
Yes, you have gone beyond Bell Luck. Just so you're aware of this.
Yeah, like I mean, you know, in all seriousness, though, when I started playing in the Toucan League, you got your luck.
Why is it called Toucan League? Are you following your nose or something?
No, that's what Sergog uses for an avatar.
Well, and it's also was like a meme because I guess they kept asking Grinding Gear Games to make a parrot as like a shoulder parrot pet or something, I think is the origins of that. And then it just became a meme. And there's a popular hideout that's got a toucan on it. So I don't know. It's a thing.
I might be willing to do this, but like I am finally just now getting in. Maybe I'll have gotten through like the trade league, but I kind of wanted to start next one as this and just be like, now I know what I'm doing this time.
Oh, and I understand.
And that's completely reasonable.
That was me. So like my progress was like, okay, I kind of like this game. It's the tail end of Sentinel. We'll see what we can do. Oh, okay. Calendra League started, and I'm going to try this for real this time. Nope, that was a mess. And then I tried one more time and like finally landed on a build that I really enjoyed and, you know, started to understand various mechanics. And like 3 leagues later, I'm still learning various mechanics.
Yeah, I think so. I had a really awkward moment the last time I played this game. I was playing Poisonous Concoction. I don't even remember what I was trying to transfer to.
It was Seismic Trap. It was the Seismic Trap guide.
Okay, I was following the Seismic Trap guide, and I did the Seismic switchover, and everything felt terrible.
As is often the case, because like usually there's gotchas that they don't ever tell you about on a lot of these. Oh, just play this one thing until this point, then switch.
So again, maybe this is just the fact that the max roll guide is actually pretty good. I did the switch this time, and oh my goodness, everything melts. I feel
Hex Blast is a good
powerful.
skill. The guide is fairly well written, though I think it leaves a few beginner-friendly things out. And also importantly, you were leveling Hex Blast the whole time, which was like I did a similar switchover on the Seismic Trap guide, and that was, I think, the difference.
Yeah, if you're specifically muling the gems that you're going to need to swap to, it feels much better. Like a lot of times on my alts, I just buy 2020 botched gems from the market whenever I get to max level, after, so long as it's not my first character.
So I ran into this problem when I was playing a totem character during Sanctum League, because totems are, quite frankly, good at Sanctum content. That's still true. But I did not know I needed to be leveling Creeping Frost in my links the entire time. And so I switched, and everything was awful. It was terrible. I didn't understand why, and basically stopped playing that character.
But yeah, now, so that's a good lesson learned. Like, make sure it's actually really funny. I only did this because of a really tiny throwaway note, which is like, oh, make sure you're definitely leveling 6 Hex Blasts in your offhand so that you can have a good chance for a 21.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's the problem, is a lot of the guides are written by people who have played this so many times that this is just common sense. Like, as soon as I can get a spare set of weapons with whatever color I want, while I'm doing the campaign, I am leveling a second set of whatever my primary ability is. Because I know I'm going to try and do the swap to 20% and then re-level them, and then try and corrupt into a 2120. But, like, that's not obvious.
No, it's not.
There's so many aspects of this stupid game that are not obvious that no one takes a minute to explain. But also, like, if you've done enough leagues, you wouldn't even think about that.
I'm actually curious. Does the Righteous Fire Guide mention this stuff?
The Righteous Fire Guide mentions every possible little thing you could think of because it's the best written guide that exists for this game.
Yes.
It is an entire wiki.
Yes. If you have a question, there's a Q&A section that's like, I don't know, 300 some questions long. Like, Pox has dedicated his life to building RF guides.
Which
he takes copious notes.
As I mentioned, I really appreciate, like, just how much of a specialist he is. I love this game because it lets me play mines. I am probably always going to try and play mines. I will eventually try and figure something else out, but I kind of want to understand all of the different opportunities that high impact mines opens up to this game.
Well, and, like, honestly, that's the thing that I learned this league, is it is a good idea just to play the thing you like first. Because I tried to play a different class, and it was fine, but it wasn't the thing I liked, which meant I couldn't do all the content I really, really, really like. So, like, it's not bad to have a pocket build that you're really comfortable with, that you play the first time. And then I've built a bunch of different things this league, but I did so out of the profits that I got off the thing that I really like.
I was going to say, I also don't know if this particular thing would work very well as SRS. Or, yes, as SFS. Solo Self-Found? SSF, that's the word.
I mean, I know there are people who do it, Solo Self-Found, but I think it's a different build.
I was going to say,
I think Pyroclast works fine. And I think to some extent, so you need to get... I don't remember if Mark of Submission works, but that's a target farmable item, if it does work. You can just run a Blasphemy Curse instead of running Profane Proxy, because I know that's not a target farmable item. So, like, you can probably make it work. You would have to play as Pyroclast for longer, because you would have to... That definitely works on SSF level gear, and you can use that to get some of the more specific stuff you want for this build.
And you could probably...
you aren't going to be using the Sandstorm. That's not a thing.
You could probably get all your Void Stones with Pyroclast Mines.
That too.
You could probably get all the way through maps with Pyroclast Mines. And then, the thing is the weird thing that happened this league is there's not many people bossing. So all the stuff that comes from bosses is really expensive this league. So, like, there was this massive niche that if you were able to boss really easily, you could have just, fed the market all the things that you were getting that you don't need.
I find this amusing because this build is exceptionally good at bossing.
But
and
people
I thought this
that build are running Sanctum. So they're not doing things that get them access to bosses, like Conqueror maps.
Right. So, like, there's a whole trickle-down chain that is missing from the economy this time, which is why it's Inflation League, is the whole act of setting up for bossing generated a bunch of side things, like Maven boots, the worm scale, or Fury, the whatever.
Legacy of Fury?
Legacy of Fury, yeah. Like, those things have been more expensive this league because people aren't just doing copious amounts of Maven.
Also, everyone playing a Chieftain has discovered that they exist.
Right. I mean, they're really good boots if you want to make things explode. Yeah, I run them on RF. I run them on my not RF build, like my Shield Crush build.
How is your Shield Crush build going?
It's an expensive mess. So the problem is, any of the builds that are quote unquote stacker builds, mana stacker, armor stacker, strength stacker, int stacker, things that want to inflate a specific thing in order for them to work, are really costly and feel real bad until you've put a ton of currency into it.
Someone who has league started an int stacker build before, I can confirm that this is true.
Yeah.
And so that build's easier to get off the ground than I'd imagine an armor stacking build would be.
Yeah, I've got the helm, but the problem is, in order to really properly do this, I need a very specific chest piece that is gotten by turning in an entire inventory of breach rings and hoping that you got a specific roll on it. Because unlike other things, you can't chaos them, because the things that are specific to that roll can't be randomed. And one of them is your armor is increased by overcapped fire damage or fire resistance. So in the case of a chieftain that can get all of their resistances by overcapping one of them, it could be insanely strong. I only have around 100,000 armor, which is not really enough to make it super good. I'm not sure what number it is that it becomes really good, but apparently over the years, Shield Crush has eaten a bunch of nerfs, so that armor stackers are much better off if you dual wield things instead.
I know people armor stacking usually dual wield Replica Dream Feather.
Right. I have one, but I mean, I can't do shield charge and shield crush if I don't have a shield. So
right. Or you could be me and get obsessed with a particular unique item somewhat early in the league and try to mess around with builds trying to make it work.
What build were you trying to make it work?
So Law of the Wilds is a claw that summons wolves on crit. I had two versions of this. One is on a raider using Frostblades and Heat Shiver, and that version is good, but would be better if I didn't use this item. The other one is on a Guardian, actually using the minions from the item. Guardian's busted, as noted previously, so this version is quite strong. The Guardian one is using Cobra Lash, of all things, to get in as many hits as possible without having to stand next to things. Cyclone is usually the thing people use to hit things fast, but I like not standing next to things. And Cobra Lash is perfectly fine for this purpose. So just sort of throw a whole bunch of knives across the screen, wolves get summoned, wolves eat everything you see. And between the Sentinel of Radiance and the Elemental Relics are the real powerhouse here.
Which
everything just kind of dies.
Good. Yeah, because you're basically getting 3 free auras.
3 free damage auras, which normally are 50% reservations each. So you can put all of your reservation skill toward. You can put all your reservation skill toward defenses, and that's totally what I'm doing. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Cough, cough. No, I am running Purity, Elements, and Determination, but I'm going to stop running Determination at some point and start running Zealotry.
Wow, so all of your things, all of your auras are going to be buffs.
Yes.
Or offensive buffs.
I mean, no, I'm still going to run Purity Elements, and I might actually run, I'm contemplating running, if I can fit it all, a triple Purity setup, like Purity of Fire, Ice, and Lightning in addition to this.
So that you can get the overcap.
Yep, get the increased max resist.
Yep. There isn't a Purity of Chaos, is there?
There is not, unfortunately.
Yeah, that would be nice if there was. Because that's the Achilles heel of my Shield Crush Chieftain is I am running way too many uniques, which means I have no chaos resistance.
You can. Are you running multiple? You can't run amethyst rings.
Like I don't remember what I'm running. No, one of my rings is a unique. So like I have a ring, and I think I have boots, and I have gloves that I can get resists on. Yeah,
That
no,
sure
it's
is a limited
mess.
set of slots.
Yeah, it's a mess. Like and you can't really get good chaos on boots or gloves.
You can get okay chaos on those.
It's like 25% is about the most you can really find without getting some crazy synthesized item that's like 15 div. Yeah, that build is an endless money pit. Like,
does it eventually pay off?
I don't know. I don't want to spend any more money on it.
This is sort of the difference between skills that are people consider good and skills that people don't consider as good. A lot of skills that are really, really good, if you continue pouring investment into them, they will pay off.
Yes. And I'm sure this one will as well, because like
Shield Crush has some really useful mechanics relating to damage overlaps.
Yes.
So like increased AoE is a damage multiplier for Shield Crush. Like there's a bunch of things where you can just make it work.
But it also needs very specific gear in order for it really to work. And I think that's the difference between what people consider good builds and bad builds is, so oftentimes the ones that are at least niche builds are just hard to build. Like they require specific things, or it, takes too long for them to ramp up, or you really need to level something else instead and then switch over to it in the end. Like a lot of the magic find things are like, yeah, no, you need to level as something else and then respec to this entirely later. I mean, the best build that I've had this entire league is, SRS Guardian.
SRS might be slightly busted. I mean, Guardian might be slightly busted.
Yeah.
And SRS is an extremely good vehicle delivery for these 3 damage auras, as it turns out.
Right. Yeah, because they're hitting so fast, they're going to proc them. And so you basically have 100% uptime, because I have 20 SRS minions up at a given time.
That is how I leveled this character, was with SRS. So now I have replaced those minions with these slightly tougher and larger minions that also benefit from claw crit modifiers, which is kind of fun. But yeah, this is very good.
Are you using minion gear with this build?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I'm not running a bone ring because like realistically I don't care that much about minion resistances.
I am running a bone ring.
The thing that I want to learn how to use, because right now it seems entirely too cumbersome, is Absolution.
I love Absolution.
I love
Absolution
the concept of Absolution. But also, like, I was just running around with it as an additional spell that I threw on my bar because I didn't have enough currency to buy exactly what I wanted, and that just happened to be a reward for something. And it's cool, but its minions don't last very long, and they're also very finicky to resummon if your main damage delivery isn't Absolution itself.
It should be. Like if you're running Absolution, it absolutely should be. Because that's kind of the thing. Like you need to be hitting enemies with the Absolution spell in order to proc the Absolution minions.
Yeah, what I was trying to do for a while was have my pack of SRS minions and then
no, that doesn't
last
work.
hit them with Absolution.
No, don't do that.
It worked for a while. Like it got me through some levels, but that was some League of Legends nonsense.
Absolution is a skill that works, I think, okay on a Guardian, but it doesn't proc it quite as often as either the Wolves or SRS will. But it does at least do, like, it is a physical converted to lightning spell, so it benefits fully from all 3 auras, but it doesn't, I don't know how to run it.
It's definitely a build that looks like it would be fun to try and, build a character around at some point.
Yeah, and also Val Absolution is a completely bonkers nonsense skill that I don't know how they put in the game and thought it was okay.
Val skills in general, like I'm running Val War Chief.
That's fun. That's a really fun button to push.
Like it's just my burn button on Shield Crush. Like, is this thing taking a little too long to die? Okay, I'll pop my Val War Chief.
If you haven't seen it, Val Absolution turns one of your Sentinels Absolution into Innocence for like almost 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It's dumb. Like, and usually instead of casting, a simple lightning bolt that explodes, it's a field of them or a giant, like,
Look,
you've
we
seen
all-
that
we all
Thanatos' thing in
know-
Hades that just makes a big circle and then everything dies in it. He does that.
Yeah, we all know innocence-touched mobs are the worst things to fight ever. Okay, what is Law of the Wilds?
Law of the Wilds is that claw that I was referring to.
Okay. So we've already sort of talked about it.
Because we've actually gotten to this topic now.
Okay. Sudoku-Con.
I assume that's a Kodra topic.
I assume it's a Kodra
yes.
topic.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I was wrong push to talk. Sudoku-Con is a convention that Clover, whose puzzles I solve on a monthly basis, is kind of helping organize. I was approached to actually help with a fundraiser that they're doing to sort of get it off the ground. So I think on November 4th, there's going to be a live stream marathon of people solving Sudoku, and I'm going to have a slot in that where I will be solving puzzles live and taking donations to help get like the basic money together to form an LLC, which is what we need in order to try and put a convention on.
Where's the con going to be located? I guess there in Seattle.
It's gonna be in Boston.
Okay.
So yeah, like I'll be helping out and doing that. I'm curious to see how this goes. I've like not organized a convention. I'm probably gonna try and not get involved with organizing a convention.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that
That's a real
sounds
good
like a losing
idea.
proposition.
Yeah, but I'll at least help with the community where I can and provide some advertisement to the stream that I'm going to be on. So come see me watch me solve puzzles.
Okay. Are you going to be on their stream, or is this going to be on your stream?
The technical details are definitely one of the things I'm trying to get figured out right now. It sounds like they do a stream, like they harvest the stream. So like I'll probably be on my channel and they'll be reposting it to theirs.
There's really ominous wordage.
Yeah.
Harvesting the stream.
Yes.
Listen, I just got to the BioShock part of Dave the Diver, so it's on my mind.
I'm going to be harvesting your content for consumption.
I will definitely rebroadcast when I see the details.
Yeah, thank you. Anyway, yeah, so I don't know what it is like to be on a stream like this, so I will be curious to see how it goes.
I think it could be fun. It definitely sounds like it could be fun.
Yep.
Okay, Kodra, I don't know how to tee this one up as well.
Yeah,
You have
well,
questions.
Yeah, I do have. So, Tam, you have beat Armored Core 6, New Game Plus, and New Game Plus, right?
Yes.
And you are still going back and you are now like trying to platinum this game. Like playing through all of the bosses, trying to get the optimal scores to get the S ranks.
I'm not going to go quite that far.
I mean, I heard you the other night trying to get the S rank for the chopper.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just sort of honestly, I'm working on S ranks just because I don't know, like there's nothing else. There's like legitimately nothing else for me to do in the game.
I mean, usually I would say by this point you would have stopped playing the game.
Normally, yeah. It's just really fun.
Yeah, and that's kind of what was interesting to me. Like, you are finding a great deal of enjoyment just like with the moment to moment, I'm guessing. I kind of want to dig in, like, what are you seeing in this game? Like, what is so unique about the moment to moment that you're finding that's drawing you back to it so much?
So I love mechs as a concept. And there are a couple of different ways to express mechs. And there's Armored Core has always, for me, hit a middle ground that I really enjoy, which is you basically can go really far in one direction and get to something like Battletech or Mech Warrior, where you're basically a big tank and you lumber, you're slow, you're heavy. And I appreciate that. You're just like bristling with tons of guns, you're super heavy, you just absorb punishment. There's not dodging is not a thing.
Yeah, the most dodging I'm doing in Mech Warrior is like repositioning around a mountain.
Right. And then you have like Gundam.
Yep.
And a lot of Gundam games, the difference between, at least the feeling that I get in a lot of the Gundam games I've played is, and I like them, I also like Mech Warrior, but it's rare that I play a Gundam game where I feel like it's meaningfully different from I'm a person with a sword or a rifle or whatever.
Yes, yeah, I
Like,
get. It feels too floaty to be mech combat sometimes.
Or it feels, I don't know if floaty is quite the word. It feels indistinct from
Gundam
if I
are
were,
people shaped
you know,
too like people. They're too agile for mechs.
Yeah, they're too agile for mechs. They're agile like a person is agile. And Armored Core manages to hit a balance between, this is not a thing that moves like a person. People do not move this way. But I am fast, I am agile. It's like it's a lot of the same thing that I really like about dogfighting, except that there's more degrees of freedom, usually. And so just the joy of motion in Armored Core is huge. And there's enough variation in what you can do between, if I'm slow, you can play a slow mech, and that is a perfectly legitimate strategy. And you can play a blindingly fast mech, also a totally legitimate strategy. And then you've got all these weird things in between, like, oh, hey, here's tank treads. Here's the quad mech that can fly. So there's all of this variety of what feel like valid builds that let you try the same things over and over again and get different results because you're just approaching them differently. And the game makes it, I think that it could be even smoother about this, but it makes it very easy to, especially when you're 2 New Game Pluses in, just swap around your builds and try something out and see how you like it.
And everything feels very different.
Yeah, like
yeah.
The core build that I'm using for most things is the lightest, fastest build I possibly can get. It's got about 1,000 HP less than the starter mech that you start the game with, but it's crazy fast, and it's basically running a pair of pistols as my sidearms and a couple of shoulder-mounted explosive grenade launchers on the shoulders, and its entire game plan is move so fast enemies can't hit you, get them stunned with the pistols, and then unload with your huge explosive back-mounted cannons. And because it's got the back-mounted cannons, it has enough flex to fight really hard targets because you can just blast them over and over with the big cannons, but it can also fight really, really fast things. On the other hand, the more enemies it has to deal with at once, the less good it is. So it's incredibly, incredibly good at fighting bosses.
Okay. Have you done much in like ultra heavy stuff?
Yeah. So one of my other builds is also meant for... one of my other builds is developed because I was trying to figure out a way to take on a boss that fired off too many AoEs that would clip me to reliably stay out of range with the really fast build, because the really fast build wants to be very, very, very close, and anything that's putting out damage in like a PB AoE around it is pretty rough to deal with.
Yeah.
So I made something that is almost the extreme opposite version by way of a tank build, because I was having trouble with this boss. I reconfigured to a tank build which basically doubled my health and is slower but equally agile. So I could dodge pretty regularly, but I could put heavier weapons on so that I could exploit the very, very limited windows I had to hit the enemy. Because one of the other weaknesses of the fast build is it doesn't have a ton of ammo. And so in an extended fight, I can run into ammo problems.
Mm.
And so this was like, I need more ammo. I need heavier weapons. Let's try something a little different. And that got me all the way to this incredibly hot nonsense. I call it the obvious Gundam villain build, where it's just bristling with heavy weapons, including I actually don't remember it's a big explosive cannon, some main hand weapon that I don't remember. Actually, no, it's an explosive main hand weapon. It's a laser sword. And then on the shoulders there's a chargeable laser cannon that does, there's like a chargeable laser cannon that you can get pretty early on, which is cool. And it does a ton of damage. There's an upgraded version that's just 3 of them. Just like, hey, do you need 3 laser cannons to fire when you pull the trigger? And so it's, it has a similar thing. It's like try to slow the enemy down, and then once you do, put an orbital laser into them.
Nice.
And there's just a whole bunch of interesting. I recently got a weapon that Wisp in Warframe has. Wisp's ultimate in Warframe is you stand still and put out just an enormous laser downrange. And you're vulnerable because you're not moving when you're firing this enormous laser, but hopefully that enormous laser is making problems for whatever it is you're pointing it at. And that gun exists in AC6, and trying to figure out a way to apply it has been a fun challenge. Because if you can actually land it, it's horrendous. I have managed to trap an enemy in a corner and turn that thing on, and they go from full to dead through multiple heals before it's done. It's just very hard to actually land it because it's like slow to reposition, and you're immobile when you're moving it, so you can only really pivot. But really, there's just so much variety, and the pacing of the game is really good. If I want to fight a really hard boss, I can fight a really hard boss. If I want to rip through a bunch of enemies, like I just flipped on System id, I can do that too. I've sort of squeezed other than trying to S rank missions, which is hard enough that I'm not. It kind of amps up the difficulty. In otherwise chill missions to something that I'm not necessarily excited about. I may continue doing it, but I sort of petered out pretty quick. Oddly, not because of the bosses. When I go back to the bosses, I S rank them pretty easily, and I've now S ranked every boss, including the true ending boss.
It's getting through the mission quick enough?
Yeah, it's that most of the missions that are actually super easy, in order to get an S rank on them, you need to be using speedrunner strats. And that's just not a thing I think about. It's like I have a completely different build for moving through some of these. I had to completely reconfigure my build in order to do into something that wouldn't actually be good elsewhere, simply to do a particular mission. And I don't necessarily want to do that every single level.
That's reasonable.
But it's just a joy to move around and play. As I've gotten, there's a really sharp difficulty spike. It is a game that as I was in the process of getting good at, I was like, man, this is rough in places. But now that I understand what it's doing and have something approaching mastery on most of its systems, it's really, really satisfying to go back and just crush bosses that ruined me previously, but also really play with all of its systems now that I know how to make them sing. I haven't yet tried the PvP, although I'm tempted despite myself. I think the other thing that helps is that it's got discrete short levels.
Yeah, I really do appreciate how short the levels are.
Yeah, and I think that when we started getting big open world games, these big seamless adventures, it was like, oh, that's so cool. We're not bound by this archaic notion of levels. you can just flow from one thing to the next. And now, like, actually, I kind of like the having everything be this discrete experience. Like, at least for this game, it works really well to have it be this discrete experience, because you just get into the action immediately. And like I hopped into Far Cry 6 a little bit, because I never quite finished that and made a little bit more progress. And I was struck by how much time I spend just making my way to the next mission, even in a game with a bunch of fast travel.
Yeah. I think this is related to the conversation we've had where MMOs were a thing because being able to do things with other players was special, and open world games were a thing because, oh my God, we can make an entire world. And now it's like, do you really need the entire world?
Yeah. Do I need all of this empty space? Or worse, do I need all of this uninteresting but not trivial space?
Right. I think that's the challenge that I've run into is like games, like I really like open world games that are really exploration heavy, but games that are fairly linear, that are set in an open world, you have to rely on the game messaging where the hell you're supposed to go really well, because otherwise you wander around a meaningless world.
Yeah. And I was having, I've sort of bounced off of Starfield, and I was trying to like analyze why I'm bouncing off of Starfield, and it's definitely hitting, I don't want to say it's an uneven experience, but it's like, it's a fragmented one.
So the problem that I have with Starfield, and I like Starfield, but it's got a lot of areas in the world that don't matter, that are basically like cookie cutter, like, so like, oh, I'm on this planet, and if I go walking in this direction, here's a refinery, but there's no reason for the refinery to be there other than to be a POI on the horizon. And like, sure, you can get some ammo and maybe the same weapons that you've seen everywhere else, and some weird cube food, but there's not really a reason for that thing to be there.
Yeah. And I think that playing a game like Armored Core 6, which is very clearly designed to be this broken up level experience, works in a way that at the moment Starfield, which has a bunch of broken up discrete levels, but also a bunch of, I feel like it's taking me forever to walk from point A to point B, doesn't, or at least hasn't for me. So I'm playing something else. Another in answer to Kodra's question, another part of it is that the level of highly focused action game I want to play is directly correlated to my stress level. So the more stressed I am, the more like I want to play something that, like, if you ever see me playing a bullet hell shooter, it's probably because I'm having a very bad week.
Reasonable.
And so, like, having been a bit stressed lately, Armored Core is filling a niche. But that's sort of secondary to just the joy of playing the game, because like Ikaruga exists and I can always break that out. I'm still no better at Ikaruga than I was 10 years ago.
Ikaruga's hard. Gear Radiant Silvergun is coming out soon.
Ooh.
Or specifically it being available on Steam.
Yeah.
I know we got started at a weird time, but I think we're probably at time.
Seems reasonable.
Any final thoughts?
Try weird new stuff.
Definitely try weird new stuff.
Try weird new stuff. Seems good.
Yeah.
Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you.